For 20 years, Jacob has not heard from his son Joseph. He believes that his son, in fact, is dead. But that's not the truth. Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt. And during that time, he actually grew to become the viceroy of Egypt, the most powerful man. But this was a fact that was not known to his family. So that when a famine plagued the land of Canaan, Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy food, because at that time Egypt had food. They came before Joseph, and they felt that this wasn't Joseph. They didn't know that it was Joseph. They thought that this was an Egyptian. And in fact, Joseph treated them very harshly, until eventually, sometime later, he revealed to them his true identity. He said, I am Joseph. You sold me into slavery. Go back to the land of Canaan and bring my father here. Now, could you imagine the predicament of the brothers? To have to go back to the land of Canaan and to tell their elderly father that Joseph was still alive. Perhaps he would suffer a terrible shock. He might even have a heart attack when he hears that his son that he had feared dead for more than 2 decades was alive. And this was a very delicate task. And therefore, one of the brothers had to put it across in such a way that Jacob would not be frightened or shocked. And he said to him, your son Joseph is still alive. But the Torah tells us, Vayafag libo. His heart wouldn't take it in. He didn't believe them. It was a story. Could he really, truly hope that Joseph was still alive? And then the Torah tells us something strange. That Jacob saw the wagons that Joseph sent with his brothers, and his spirit became alive, and he believed that Joseph was still alive. What does that mean exactly? Why was it that when his sons told him that Joseph was still alive, he didn't believe them? But when he saw the wagons, the agalot, he did believe them. So Rashi tells us something fascinating from the Talmud. That all of those years ago, 22 years ago, when Jacob sent Joseph to his brothers, that day that he disappeared, he was walking together with Joseph. And Joseph said to him, Abba, Father, why are you escorting me? There's no need. And Jacob said, yes, there is a need. There is a special mitzvah in the Torah called livayah, to escort somebody. When you have people over at your home, when you look after guests, it's not enough that you feed them and that you give them to drink and that you give them accommodation. You also have to accompany them to make sure that they go out safely on their way. And in fact, there is a special mitzvah in the Torah that shows the importance of this. The Torah tells us of the Eglah Rufa. This ceremony took place when a person was found murdered outside a city. They would measure to the nearest city, and the inhabitants of that city had to bring a young calf that had never been worked before, and they would have to kill it there and wash their hands over the carcass and say, our blood, our hands did not spill this innocent blood. What was their meaning? Their meaning was, we didn't know about this person, because had we known about this person, we would have escorted them out of the city. We would have made sure that they didn't come into harm's way. And said Jacob to Joseph, he said, one day there is going to be a mitzvah for the Jewish people, and that mitzvah is going to be the Eglah Rufa, this calf that has to be killed, this whole ceremony that has to happen because people failed to accompany somebody. And therefore it is so important for me to escort you. And in Hebrew, the word for a calf is eglah, which is exactly the same letters as agalah, which means a wagon. When Jacob saw the wagons, this reminded him of what he had been learning with Joseph on that fateful day. Because Joseph sent those wagons to escort his father, to remind him, Father, remember what you taught me all of those years ago, how important it is to escort somebody, to look after somebody. If that was true in the old days, when travel, of course, was dangerous, it is certainly true today. Travel can be very dangerous. Somebody comes to you from some foreign country, they're not sure of the roads, help them out. Perhaps show them an app on their cell phone, Waze, or lend them a GPS unit, or at the very least give them a map so that they can find their way safely. There have been too many terrible stories of people who are in a foreign place and they end up in a very dangerous part of town, and they could be mugged, or they could be in some way harmed or even killed, God forbid. And therefore we have this important mitzvah of escorting the guests. And even if there's no real harm, nevertheless the halakha tells us that after you have had your guests over for dinner or for lunch, whatever it is, you should at least take 4 steps with them from your door to escort them, because that shows the honor in which you hold people, the dignity that they've been given, that you care for them, and you care where they are going. And it is because of this mitzvah that Jacob ultimately believed that Joseph was still alive. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.